Well, it's that time. Time to give the people exactly what they want, and that is math. But not just any kind of math, shield math. It's a big discussion. It's a big topic. Staying alive. That's really what we're talking about. Sorry. So the first things I want to cover are the big three. These are capacity, absorption, and regeneration. Now, absorption is a neat one because there's only one type of shield array in the game that actually makes use of this mechanic, and that is resilient shield arrays. Every resilient shield array in the game has a 5% absorption rate. To put it in another way, anybody fighting you while you're wearing a resilient shield is only going to be doing 95% of their potential total DPS. Sounds really cool, right? So again, the other two in addition to absorption are capacity and regeneration. Now, the neat thing about these is you can't usually have one really high with the other really high. So it's very easy to rank all four different shield types in a very linear fashion. Capacity on one side, regeneration on the other side. At the top end on capacity is the covariant shield type. On the regeneration side of it is the appropriately named regenerative shield arrays. And in the middle of those two are the resilients, which I mentioned earlier, and the standard shield arrays that are just called shield arrays. I'm going to go through each individual shield type, tell you why they excel, in which situations, why you would choose them, and why you would not. Got it? Okay! Regenerative shield arrays are best if you're running at a very high shield energy. Why? Because currently shield energy affects one thing and one thing only, and that is your regeneration. High shield energy will potentially double the amount of regeneration that you can get on a regenerative shield array that is already pretty darn high. Not high enough, unfortunately. You see, you will never be able to regenerate more damage than you are taking, unless you have the capability of forcing your enemies to not shoot at you for extended periods of time. See, this is where regenerative shields actually do excel, is burst combat. They can take just as much beating as any other type of shield, but then will bounce back even faster, but only if you're not being shot at constantly. In a sustained firefight, regenerative shields come in dead last. Now, moving up, the next is the resilient shields. These are the ones I talked about earlier that have the 5% damage negation. Neat. However, to balance out this advantage, they have both a lower regeneration than regenerative shields and a significantly lower cap than covariant shields. Now, going back to the idea of a sustained firefight, these resilient shields will actually allow you to survive slightly longer than regeneratives, but because they come with a significantly lower cap, they are actually less resilient, Maki quotes, than regular standard shield arrays, which come with a higher innate cap. That 5% difference in incoming damage is not sufficient to offset this very large difference in overall capacity between the two shield types, meaning that shield arrays are actually more resilient than resilient shield arrays. However, that's basically all that standard shield arrays have going for them. They're just very middle range. They're very average. Blah. But on the high end, we have the big daddy, the papa, the big cheese, the mother of all shield arrays, the covariant shields. Highest capacity, lowest regen. The fact that their regeneration rate on a covariant shield is so freaking low means that even if you pump your shield energy level all the way up to 100, you still will not see any difference in your overall performance. So, by using a covariant array, you gain the luxury of being able to set your shield energy at whatever the hell you want and use the rest of the energy for more important things like guns. Big guns! On the other hand, this is also a downside because by using a covariant shield array, even with your shield energy at 100%, your regeneration is so abysmal that you will have to be almost entirely reliant upon shield regeneration healing abilities or batteries to regenerate your actual shield levels. This means that even though you can stay in a firefight for much longer than anybody else could hope to, at the end of it, you just kind of gotta sit around waiting for your shields to come back. Now, I mentioned that this would tie into the new healing changes coming out on Tribble at this time, and this is where it actually gets a little bit complicated because the healing abilities themselves can benefit each different type of shielding array in a different manner. Specifically, abilities that reduce the amount of incoming damage by adding additional resistances are more beneficial to people using regenerative shield arrays. Now, this is because if you reduce the amount of incoming damage so that it is less than the amount of regeneration that the shield is doing, you are in essence doing 0 damage. Whereas if you use a resistant buff on a covariant shield, that shield is still getting damaged and will never regenerate enough to offset the damage. Therefore, you are still going to have to eventually use a healing ability on that shield. Conversely, big fat heals are obviously going to benefit somebody using a covariant more so than they would a regenerative, because if you heal more than they actually have, you're wasting energy. And one last thing to keep in mind, how this ties into the new healing abilities. If you yourself are using a covariant shield and are a healer, remember that allows you to take that shield energy down and pump it into Ox, enabling you to heal more effectively. So keep that in mind. And one final caveat before I let you go is the fact that some of this might be changing. There have been hints of a new system rolling out whereby shield energy will also play into both your total shield cap and your resistance level. But that change is only being kicked around. It's not official. I'm just going to ignore it. And I feel like I'm getting a little long-winded here, so I'm going to cut it off here. If you have any questions, comments, corrections that you wish to share with me, send them over to Jeremy at JupiterBroadcasting.com. And that wraps it up. You just got mathed.